This is Brother Peter Diamond, vaticancatholic.com. I wanted to offer some comments about the recent mini-schism within the Society of St. Pius X. Apparently, a few weeks ago, a group of approximately 25 priests separated from the Society of St. Pius X as a result of their frustration over how the current leadership is handling negotiations with apostate Vatican II Rome. Normally, the internal schismatic squabbles of the Society of St. Pius X are not worth a person's time to consider. However, since the declaration made by these priests is so revealing about the doctrinal bankruptcy of the Society of St. Pius X's position in general, it's worth discussing. It also caught my attention that this breakaway group is being led by these priests and Father Joseph Pfeiffer in particular. Father Joseph Pfeiffer is one of the most outspoken members of the Society of St. Pius X on the issue of, quote, baptism of desire, salvation outside the church, and arguments that you don't need the Catholic faith for salvation. Those arguments have all been refuted, but I find it very interesting that a heretic such as this is the one leading the charge against the movement within the Society of St. Pius X to fully reconcile with apostate Rome. That really tells you how pathetic the Society of St. Pius X is as a whole. Now, in this declaration, these priests speak of the Vatican II Church as another entity, as a non-Catholic entity. They say there is an illusion that one can join the Vatican II Church without accepting Vatican II. Well, if it's a non-Catholic entity, the individual who leads it, Benedict XVI, cannot also be the head of the Catholic Church. There's only one fold and one shepherd, and that principle applies to a true pope over the true church. He cannot be the true pope over a non-Catholic Vatican II Church and also the true Catholic Church. It's just another example of the striking inconsistency in their false position. They also speak of the adherents of the Vatican II Church as not having the Catholic faith. They say that they need to come back to the Catholic faith. Well, in case they did not know, it's a dogma that there's only one faith in the Church. If someone does not have the Catholic faith, he cannot hold office in the Church. That's a dogma. The position they express here is heretical. It's actually doctrinal puke, as we mentioned in our article on Bishop Williamson's false positions and explanations. But it doesn't really even matter to the followers of the Society of St. Pius X at large, because sadly, almost all of them only care about externals and community and the Mass. They don't care about whether their positions make sense, whether they're true, whether they're faithful to Catholic dogma. It's truly pathetic. In this same declaration, this group criticizes the SSPX current leadership as abandoning the flock to the wolves of the diocesan bishops. So according to them, you should have nothing to do with these wolves, these diocesan bishops. I find this particularly outrageous because these same priests would officiate at churches which had bookstores that offered materials such as Sedevacantism, a false solution to a real problem, which essentially declares that people who do not regard the diocesan bishops as legitimate and Benedict XVI as the legitimate pope are schismatics. The priests making this declaration would still adhere to the position described in that book, namely that the sedevacantist position, which rejects the diocesan bishops as illegitimate, is schismatic. So while they say that that position is schismatic and that you must recognize the diocesan bishops, they simultaneously declare that to have anything to do with the diocesan bishops they all recognize, or to want to join up with the diocesan bishops they all regard as legitimate, is to abandon the flock to the wolves. It's just pure schism and heresy. And this is not something they've held for a week or a month or even a year. This is something they've promoted year after year after year after year in the face of the evidence. In the declaration, these priests also describe the false teachings of the Vatican II Church as more new heresies. They are correct. There are many heresies in the Vatican II Church's teaching. Well, if they teach heresies and if they adhere to heresies, they are heretics and they cannot hold office in the Church. They even admit that the officials who promote these new heresies are obdurate in this regard. That means obstinate or stubborn or pertinacious. This undercuts and in fact destroys their claim that the officials who adhere to these new heresies are only material heretics, because their argument that they're only material heretics hinges on their claim that they're not obdurate. But they're admitting that they're obdurate or stubborn or pertinacious. Therefore, they're formal heretics. Therefore, they cannot be legitimate occupants of Catholic offices. It's just one massive inconsistency and contradiction of Catholic truth after another. It's just doctrinal puke, and they can get away with it because people don't care about the truth. That is, the people who support them. They only care about externals and community. Perhaps the most revealing false statement in this declaration is that they criticize the leadership's use of ambiguous language that refers to two opposite magisteria. Magisteria is the plural of magisterium. What they're saying is that the post-Vatican II Church has a magisterium which contradicts the magisterium of the pre-Vatican II Church. That's heresy. It's a dogma that the magisterium is infallible. Hence, the idea that there can be two opposite magisteria, or that the magisterium can contradict itself, is equivalent to saying that the Catholic Church can defect. Here are the papal quotes on how the magisterium is infallible. Just a few. Pope Pius XI, Divini Ilius Magistri. Upon this magisterial office, Christ conferred infallibility. The magisterium is infallible. If something is magisterial, it's infallible. The magisterium cannot contradict itself. It cannot oppose its own teaching. He says in the same document, God himself has made the Church share in the divine magisterium and by special privilege granted her immunity from error. Pope Leo XIII in Caritatis Studium says that there is a living perpetual magisterium and that it could by no means commit itself to erroneous teaching. Therefore, what we have in this declaration is blatant heresy. And it also speaks to the fact that the Society of St. Pius X is very deceiving because people think that they really understand dogmatic principles. They don't at all. At their seminaries, they focus on liturgy. They really understand almost nothing about Catholic dogmatic teaching. And the reason for that is that the priests who teach at their seminaries and the people who lead their group believe in salvation outside the Church. The dogmas aren't important to them because they don't even believe in the dogmas. What's important to them are the external aspects of Catholicism. And by denying the truth of the faith, they reveal themselves to be non-Catholics. So I just wanted to comment on this as really a revealing example of the doctrinal bankruptcy of the Society of St. Pius X. And what I'm saying, even though it's in regard to this separated group, it applies equally as well to the main Society of St. Pius X. They hold the same kinds of illogical positions. As we pointed out in our file on the Society of St. Pius X, you can read the documentation of their heretical teachings on salvation outside the Church. They say it over and over again. Lefebvre says that souls can be saved in non-Catholic religions. Schmittberger said it. Fillet said it. It's in their publications. That's what all of their priests believe. They hold that the non-Catholic Vatican II Church is non-Catholic, yet it's still the Catholic Church, and its leaders are Catholic. And what's so outrageous is that these priests are upset that their leaders would actually consider joining up with the bishops they all agree are the legitimate bishops. It's just so stupid. Another point is the fact that if these priests are going to take the step to separate from the Society of St. Pius X, they would have a prime opportunity to tell the truth, at least about the sedevacantist position, and say, there's no way we can regard these guys as popes. It's just doctrinally untenable. They're heretics. They're obdurate in their heresies. Because one of the things that ties people down to false positions is human attachments. That's one of the most frequent examples of what keeps people in a false or compromised position. Hence, if they're going to reject the attachment to the Society of St. Pius X's larger group, then they have a prime opportunity now to tell the truth about what's going on in Rome. But no, they're so of bad will that they still convince themselves that these members of the Vatican II Church who don't have the Catholic faith by their own admission are the Catholic leaders. It's really pathetic, and I just wanted to comment on the inconsistency of this position and why those who would adopt this position or support it reject the Catholic faith.